Hello, my name is Stephen Ongena. I'm at the University of Zurich and at the Swiss Finance Institute, and today I want to talk about the question, why do banks syndicate credit? The work I'm currently engaged with Alex Osberghaus, who's also at the University of Zurich Swiss Finance Institute, and Glenn Schepens, who is at the European Central Bank, consists in putting together two data sets to answer these questions. Why do banks syndicate credit? And the two data sets is, on the one hand, the ANA credit, which is the large credit register that is present in the many countries in the European Union, and the DealScan data set, which consists of all syndicated loans that are being reported to this data set. To answer the question, we lay these two data sets together and investigate which banks and what firms are going to syndicate credit rather than receiving or granting bilateral bank credit. And in first instance, one could think that syndication is a matter of graduation, that it is a necessary intermediate stop between receiving, for firms, between receiving bilateral bank credit and issuing bonds. Another conjecture could be that it's all size related, that as the amounts of credit are increasing, banks turn to other banks to help them carry the credit risk. Now, on both sides, or both hypotheses, are not to be present in the data. What we find actually is that syndication is not at all graduation, it's actually a sidestep. And secondly, what we find also is that it's not only about size. Size is actually one issue, but there are many issues that are playing. Our investigation consists in looking at the likelihood that a loan is going to be syndicated versus a loan is going to be granted bilaterally by a bank. And what we find is that actually the health of the bank and its industry specialization is going to play an important role in that decision. So within bank, the choice of syndicated loan is going to be more readily made when the bank is actually having a low capital ratio and when the bank is not specialized. When a bank is very healthy, having a high capital ratio, and when the bank is very specialized, then the bank is actually going to grant more likely a bilateral loan. And so to this extent, the syndicated loan market is going to provide an avenue for the banks when they are weak and when they are not so potentially informed about a certain industry, to involve other banks to partake in the granting of credit to the firm within the syndicate. Now, we also observe that when a firm has a high PD, meaning when the firm has a high probability of default as assessed either by the bank itself or by other banks, that then a loan is more likely going to be syndicated. So it's the more risky firms, when dealing with weaker banks and less knowledgeable banks, that are going to be ending up receiving syndicate loans rather than bilateral loans. Now, we also find that when we compare bilateral loans with syndicate loans in terms of their pricing, we also find that syndicate loans are more expensive. So the spread is going to be higher on a syndicate loan than on a comparable term loan. Now, within the confines of this paper, we're also going to be doing many robustness checks, checking whether or not this is partly size related. We find it is not, so we control for size, but we also do size bucketing. And so it is true that the larger the amount of credit, the more likely it is that the loan is going to be syndicated. But all of the drivers that I was pointing out before are going to still prevail, controlling for loan amount. And we also then look within a certain range of making the loans even more comparable, and we find these results to prevail. In the end, what seems to be the picture is that syndication is not a graduation. It is almost like a sidestep for firms that are more risky, and especially when dealing with banks that are not so well capitalized, for banks that are not so industry specialized, then we see more syndication taking place. And the pass-through from the syndication then, which is another result, to the bond market is not at all different from the direct graduation that we observe from the receiving bilateral bank credit to the bond market. So the syndicated loan market is really a bit of a sidestep for firms, and that is, we think, a very surprising result, and is not at all consistent with looking at the syndicated loan market as a way for banks to graduate then eventually to the bond market.